Hi, I'm Dr. Brian Kaufman, a retired family doctor, the Executive Vice President and Chief Medical Officer of the nonprofit CLL Society. Dr. K?
Hi, my name is Neil Kay. I'm glad to be here, Brian. I'm a hematologist and I work at Mayo Clinic, and my specialty focus is chronic lymphocytic leukemia.
And you and your team at Mayo have been very involved in CLL research, and you right now have a trial that I think you're rolling out soon, specifically for when CLL meets COVID, which is a big problem. Can you tell us a little bit about why you're putting that trial together, when it opens up, how people enroll, what's involved in that trial?
Sure, thank you. So this trial was, the genesis of this trial really came very much on the heels of the shutdown in this country where COVID was really exploding. We weren't quite sure where it was going to go, and there really wasn't a lot of information on how specifically CLL patients would handle COVID. And the original idea for this was that we would want to observe the outcomes of individuals with CLL once they had COVID infection. Uh, we, we were wearing, by the way, it's Dr. Samir Parikh and myself at Mayo Clinic who developed the strategy for this trial. So we were aware as we constructed this trial of a report by Steve Treon that was published early on in sometime in the spring about the observation that CLL patients on ibrutinib seem to do better than those who were not. And this was really just an observational,
And,
anecdotal, if you will.
and weren't there Waldenstrom's patients in that too, if I'm recalling correctly?
That's correct.
Yeah.
It was an interesting observation, and from that observation, there is now a clinical trial that Steve is leading, actually looking at, I believe it's non-CLL patients who are being put on ibrutinib, but we focused on CLL. And what we decided was that there were no pros and cons about being on ibrutinib or being off ibrutinib, that it was worth a randomized trial to really see what the outcome would be for CLL patients who walk into the doctor's office or hospital who have COVID infection, and they're actually on ibrutinib. And the strategy for this trial is to basically segregate patients who have mild disease and those who have moderate disease. So the mild patients are outpatients. The moderate patients are those who need to be hospitalized but are not requiring mechanical ventilation. And then the strategy would be for the mild patients that they would be observed. This is an observational cohort, and it's the caregiver's choice to either continue them on ibrutinib or not. Whereas those individuals who come into hospital would be randomized 1-to-1. Again, these are not on mechanical ventilation. These are patients who have severe disease in the hospital. They would be randomized 1-to-1 to either come off ibrutinib or stay on ibrutinib. And that protocol has been written up. It is funded. We are very excited about having this trial activated fairly shortly. It will be a multi-institutional trial. So let me explain the rationale for this and continuing
So
on.
let me ask you just a couple other things on that. So if somebody is not on ibrutinib, they wouldn't be randomized to try ibrutinib or not try ibrutinib. It's not for that.
It's not that, correct.
And if they're on acalabrutinib or zanubrutinib, they also wouldn't qualify for this trial. Is that correct?
I'll include them, but it's just patients on ibrutinib.
Okay.
I think it would be important to test patients on acalabrutinib as well.
Okay.
So just to finish my comment about why would you have them on or off ibrutinib? So while the anecdotal reports are that it's beneficial to be on ibrutinib, there are reasons to not want to take your patient off ibrutinib. There would be a flare issue potentially. They're doing well on ibrutinib typically. Most patients are. There is some suggestion of immune enhancement for patients on ibrutinib. There are several compelling reasons why you might want to keep them on, but there are also compelling reasons why you might want to have them off. This is an elderly population. This drug carries with it the risk of atrial fibrillation, hypertension. There is also reports that macrophage function can be impaired on ibrutinib. It's
Remind
not.
us what a macrophage is.
Thank you. It's a blood. Uh, it's a monocyte circulating in the blood, or when it goes into the tissue, differentiates into a macrophage. These cells are responsible for what we call phagocytosis, that is eating up bacteria and getting rid of viruses and helping in our innate immunity, that is our initial response to infections. They're very important, at least frontline immune cells, defending us against infections, at the very least.
Yeah, so they're a white blood cell that specifically is part of that very first, they're a first responder to infections, where later the adaptive immune system, where we form antibodies and specific T cells that attack the cells, those come along later, but they buy us the time, recognize the foreign invader, and start the process, and then call for the troops behind to have a targeted response. They're a very non-specific response, but without them, we're in a lot of trouble.
Exactly. You know, I've often called you the Richard Attenborough, medical jargon. You
Uh-huh.
are, that was a very terrific explanation of what a monocyte is and can do for us. So at any rate, the heart of the trial is to really do a randomized for the more moderate patients, randomized trial. Is it beneficial to be on or off? For the patients who have mild disease, is an observational cohort. We're excited about getting some, if you will, robust, hardcore clinical trial data that will help us know the answer to whether or not you should continue on ibrutinib or not, depending on the level of disease that you have.
Do you have a sense of when this trial will go live, and can you give us a sense of what cities that it'll be in across the U.S.?
Yes, and we hope it will go live in the next 4 to 6 weeks. And the cities that would currently be involved would be New York City and also Rochester, and then one other site in the West Coast that I've been asked not to mention yet.
All right, so and that's Rochester, Minnesota. Yes, and 6 weeks from now would be mid-April kind of thing that you're thinking of.
Not mid-April. 6 weeks from now would be mid-November.
I mean mid-November. I don't know why I said mid-April. Mid-November. Yes. Whoops. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Mid-November. Okay. So in the middle of the flu season. Yes. Right.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah. Any final thoughts on this trial or anything you want to say about it?
Well, I would hope that people are interested in participating. You know, I just thank you for asking that question. I'm reminded of the situation with a very famous therapy for CLL, which was not randomized, was not tested in randomized trials until much later in the game. And the data for responses and for how patients dealt with it was really only totally revealed when phase 3 trials were done with multi-institutional approach participation. And I believe COVID is going to be with us for a while. And unfortunately, the son and daughters of COVID may be coming down the pike, given globalization and virus mutation. These kinds of trials give us really important, valid data to tell us what we should be doing with our patients. And these novel agents are so amazing and so helpful. We want to be able to counsel patients in a wise way uh, with these agents, in understanding how these agents should or should not be used in a given patient. So I think that hopefully lots of other people will feel the same way as
Yeah.
we.
Dr. K, I'm always big on clinical trials, and I think we need them for all parts. And I think there's not a lot of silver linings to the COVID story, but I think one of the silver linings is people who who've never thought about clinical trials are thinking about them now and aware of their importance and are learning about the science behind that. Neil, always great to catch up with you. I can't wait till we can meet in person. Sorry about the miss up on the date there, but I look forward to meeting at some point in the real world, though I agree with you. I think 2021 is going to be a write-off for people like myself who are immune compromised in the sense of actually getting on a plane and going to a meeting. Yeah.
Agreed. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you. You take care now. Bye-bye.